Which is we do that, right? We create processes. It's like, this happens, you do this. If someone wants a refund, this is how you process it. If someone wants an exchange,
Correct.
This is how you process it. I mean, realistically, isn't that how businesses, like good businesses, should run?
Sure, absolutely. There should be processes. What we don't think about, though, is we're deploying these processes. We build them in a room that's plain and nice and comfortable in a non-stressful situation where we imagine what are all the scenarios that can go through this process. We then deploy it in a super volatile, chaotic and ambiguous world. And you can't control all the different inputs that are going on. And so we say to someone, okay, you have to pick A or B. In this situation, you have to do A or B. At some point, though, A and B might both be wrong. And so our person, John in this case, goes, I've got to do A or B, but they're both not right. So what options do they have?
Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If you're looking to get more sales, more customers, master your marketing, and ultimately take control of your retail or e-commerce business, then you're in the right place. I'm Selena Knight, a retail growth strategist and multi-award-winning store owner whose superpower is uncovering exactly what your business requires to move to the next level. I'll provide you with the strategies, the tools, and the insight you need to scale your store. All you need to do is take action. Ready to get started? Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Now, I have been on a bit of a hiring blitz lately. As our company grows, I need more people. But something recently happened that was a little bit, it took me by surprise, I guess, was that as I was interviewing for our new business admin manager job, I met somebody who had a strong background in sales. And this person had applied for the position because they had quite a lot of experience in retail. But after talking to them a few times, I realized that the business admin manager job wasn't the best fit for their skills. Like, it was clear that they were more sales oriented, and especially sales in retail, which got me thinking, could we use this person in our business? This is what I love when you are growing, is opportunities just seem to pop up. Now, you have to know when to take those opportunities and when, obviously, not to take those opportunities. But I've been on such a fantastic roll. I feel like, my vibration is running high and opportunities are just presenting themselves left, right, and center. So it got me thinking, could we use this person in our business? And I could see ways that we could. We've had a business development manager who came in and worked with us on contract. And so now we're looking to fill that role. Now we know that there's a role for that person. We're looking to fill that role because, as you know, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, my vision is to help 50,000 independent retailers in the next 5 years. And the only way I can do that is if I work with some companies, like a lot of companies that have you guys as customers. So think of payment platforms. We're talking about e-commerce platforms, retail POS, all those sorts of people. That's the kind of job a business development manager does. They go and talk to those people and have discussions on how we can work together to give you guys the knowledge you need to scale your business. But hey, you're already on the right track because you're listening to this podcast. So this person wasn't a business development manager. They were more sales. And it got me thinking, could we use a salesperson in the business? Or more importantly, how could a salesperson with retail experience help my customers? And it got me thinking, and I didn't quite know. It took me over the weekend to work it out. And then it hit me. And I found the perfect place to put this person into the business. It was a position that was helping our customers once they had come into our ecosystem. But it was a kind of sales role as well. I mean, it's not the hardcore pushy sales role, but there was definitely opportunity to present other offerings that we have, whether it was Scale Your Store or our mentoring program, different workbooks, all the resources that we have, being able to listen to what customers need and then point them in the right direction of the products that we have, or sometimes the products or services that our partners have that could help them to grow. I mean, that's what we're here for. So the simple process of having a conversation with someone who was not even the right fit for the job has scaled our business model and our customer experience quite exponentially. Now, you guys won't have seen that happen just yet because obviously we're still onboarding, we're still training. But I am so excited because if I can create a higher touch experience, if I can, and what I mean by that is if I can give you access to people and resources that help you scale without you wasting time trying to find stuff, like without all the trialing and erroring, because trialing and erroring costs a lot of money. I don't know about you, but it puts a great big dent sometimes in my pride, but it also slows down your growth timeline. Now, sometimes the errors work in your favor. I'm all good for that. I'm not saying don't ever trial and error. But if there's a simple thing that the solution is already there, there's no point in reinventing the wheel, right? So I'm super pumped that this is going to be happening, and you'll hear more about it soon as it all unfolds. But in the back of my mind, there's always that niggle. Is that you're here listening to this podcast because you want to hear what I have to say, or you want to hear what my guests have to say, because clearly there's some kind of alignment for them to be on this show. I mean, we heavily vet the guests that come on. They do pre-qualifier interviews to see if the information that they're going to give you is worth your time listening to, because time is one of our most valuable, if not the most valuable asset that you have. Now, I have and continue to build an amazing team who are super smart, who are bold and knowledgeable and insightful and are passionate about helping you guys. But the thing is, the first person that you have generally had any interaction with is me, whether it's listening to this podcast, whether it's coming to one of our live events, whether it's seeing me on stage speaking, whether it is buying one of our masterclasses or doing one of our programs or our workbooks. The fact is, it's my head and it's my information that you guys are exposed to. So there's a direct relationship here, right? You guys are essentially buying me. And by that extension, my team have to embody everything that I think and that I do, but at the same time, I've hired them for their unique skill set. So it's a really fine line, isn't it? And you guys have the same thing in your business. Your business is hopefully not your baby, but your business is the vehicle for you to help your customers and to make you money. And if you don't have a vision of what this looks like and what's important to you, then what ends up happening is you end up with the wrong people and they don't embody your vision. So with all of that in mind, I've brought on today's guest, Daniel Murray from Empathic Consulting, to talk about this difference between why your team aren't doing what you want them to do. Now, I love that Daniel has this weird mix of starting off in sort of the pure mathematical realm and moving into neuroscientific concepts. I mean, there's a lot. I'm always a big fan of anything kind of brain related and the neuroscientific stuff. But this is Daniel's job, right? I'm just a pop psychologist at best. But Daniel's clients love him because he does bring humor and fun into the challenges that we experience as leaders. And he has this ability to make really complex concepts simple and practical to implement. I'm sure you're going to love today's episode with Daniel Murray from Empathic Consulting. So let's jump in. Hey there, Daniel. Welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you here because you know what? I don't think that I'm a control freak, but I kind of like people to do what I want them to do.
It's good self-awareness, Selena. I think that's a first step. But it's great to be with you, and I'm really excited about having a chat.
Do you know one of the things that I do? I am quite self-aware these days. And one of the things when I hire, because I've just been through this big hiring blitz, is I actually make it a point to tell people that I am a very big picture thinker and that I am not necessarily always good with the details. So I know where I want the end result to be. And of course, it's in my head. It's not in anybody else's head. And I pretty much leave it up to other people to work out the journey to get there, which quite often means that sometimes I get disappointed because I haven't communicated that very well. So it's something that I definitely try to work on. But I want to know how you managed to go from doing, was like quantum physics or quantum mathematics. It's way too many maths words in there for me to actually understand what it was you started out doing.
Yeah, look, I did an undergrad in pure and applied mathematics, so systems theories, chaos theory, lots of boring stuff that if you tell people at barbecues that you've done, they stop talking to you and walk away. Yeah, I've got an interesting background in sort of that analytical side, and moved into what is now leadership development, training and consulting, particularly in that area of empathy. I was talking to someone earlier around soft skills, and I hate that term, but it's really people skills. How do you lead and manage people?
Sorry, you've gone from like pure IQ, like just in simplistic terms, pure IQ to almost like pure EQ.
Maybe that's one way of thinking of it. The other way, and there's two ways I would explain this. One is I worked in a purely analytical space, really trying to work out systems, processes, and understanding how they worked and how we could do them more effectively. The thing that kept happening, though, is despite our beautiful PowerPoint presentations and chevrons, things still went wrong. The wild card in that scenario, the chaotic element, if you like, in the system was people. And we kept ignoring it. We'd call them FTE. No one really wants to be called an FTE. Bill's not a 0.67. He's a real person. He wants to be treated.
What's an FTE?
Full-time equivalent is what
right, yes.
we use
in
often.
Hiring, yes.
Yeah, in hiring, but also in project management. We'll say how many warm bodies have we got to do this project? The question we don't ask is, do they really want to do it or not?
Yeah.
And if they don't really want to do it, then that whole equation falls apart. And so my desire and ambition was, okay, how can I understand that more? How do we try and understand this part of the system more? So it still comes from the idea that our objective is to drive performance and get the results we're after and do that in an effective and sustainable way. But to do that, you need to understand the people. Because if you don't understand the people element, there's a very little chance you're going to be reaching those objectives that you're looking to reach. It was a transition to trying to understand people, and people are just the most complex system in the known universe.
I was going to say, is there any way to understand people?
Yes and no. It is incredibly difficult. It's some part art, some part science. One of the challenging things is I can't even really ask you why you do what you do. When you ask someone, why did you do that? They'll give you an answer, but that's not necessarily the driver of that. Stores like Aldi know this intuitively, don't they?
Yeah.
They'll put the tomatoes and then the hedge trimmers and then the pecan nuts right next to each other. And, the logical brain goes, well, that's silly. Why would you put those things here? They'd be better in the hardware section. But what Aldi know is that little tiny things can have a huge impact on you, and you can make decisions that, if we nudge people, if we put things in front of them, they can have irrational but meaningful decisions that cause them to buy a hedge trimmer when they don't even own a hedge.
When they're buying salad.
That's right. I went to the shops to get, this is a classic, I went to the shops to get bread and milk, and I came back with, a new car. And it's understanding that complexity that allows you to start to bring that into the way you design your systems, the way you design your organization and run your business.
So people are complex. I'm always good at looking back and seeing those pivotal moments, because you don't know them at the time, right? But looking back, you're like, oh, I remember when this happened, like everything changed. And I didn't know it at the time, but now that I'm, debriefing myself on a situation, that decision that I made in that moment changed, sometimes the entire course of your life. So was there anything that happened to you that was kind of like, this is the route that I want to go down?
Yeah, there's a few. And I might give you one that was sort of more personal and one that was in my business life. Personally, I was was in France. We were on a bit of a holiday, and I'm a bit of one of those sad little middle-aged men in Lycra who like to get on their bikes and ride up big mountains and do funny stuff. So we were in France, and there's this mountain called Mont Ventoux, which all the cycling nerds will know it. And it's about 20 kilometers from the bottom to the top. It's really steep, really hard. And I got a bike and suited up and decided to give it a crack. I had a GoPro, a GPS monitor, a heart rate monitor, I had all the gear.
Yes.
No idea. Got to. And being a bit of a maths nerd, you've got to upload all of that onto Strava and compare yourself with everyone else. It's just a little mecca for a middle-aged man in Lycra, I think. So I did it. I rode up there and it was 2 hours or so of agony. And when I rode back down, got to our Airbnb and uploaded my data, I was sort of looking through it, and there's thousands of people who ride this mountain every year.
And I'm sure by now you're feeling pretty pumped up that you've managed to do this.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, right? And that was where it got weird. I looked at the data and it was completely unremarkable. There was nothing special at all. It was middle of the road. You compare yourself with everyone else. Mine was sort of, average. And it was a bit of a letdown, but it was also a big realization. Because I was working with organizations who said data-driven decision-making is what we do. We just focus on the metrics, the numbers. And if you were one of those companies, you looked through this data, you just looked right past mine. It was nothing special at all. The interesting thing was that wasn't my experience. My experience was this was the best moment of my sad little cycling career, and nothing captured that. There was no device, there was no data that said this is different, this was special. And that's where, my mind, the penny dropped and went, if I'm working with an organization and I'm only using what I can measure to make decisions or to drive this thing forward, then I'm very likely going to be missing a lot of stuff. We saw this with the famous I Bought a Jeep campaign that Jeep ran years ago. They didn't worry about cars anymore. If you go back and watch the ads, they show a car for 1 second at the end of the ad. There's no promises, no prices. They don't care. The car's not even in the ad. And that's probably because they're not very good cars. So not focusing on the car was a good decision, I think. But
that's happening a lot in ads. We sometimes sit down and see an ad and it's like, is this an ad for home insurance? And it's not. It's an ad for Coca-Cola. And you're, what? I'm confused now.
Yeah, and look, you can push that too far, obviously. But the thing they're working on is you don't care about their product. You care about you.
Yeah.
You care about how you feel. In my business life, I worked with a bank and we were trying to cut costs. And I said, look, here are these, they were giving diaries, insignia diaries to high value customers. And they were spending, I don't know, 180 grand a year on them. I said, this is an easy cost saving, right? Let's just cut them out. And the gentleman who I thought was going to say, yes, that's great, cut them out, said, no, they're really important, need to keep them. Again, instead of thinking strategically, let's do a survey or a study about this and prove that it's not valuable, or politically, let me go over this person's head and, just get it overruled. I thought psychologically, what does this person really want?
Do you mean the man in the bank or the customer?
Yeah, no, the man in the bank. What I'm trying to get this thing that I'm pretty sure is a waste of money out, but what do they want? What's going on for them?
Yeah, why is he so passionate that these have to stay?
Yeah, and my assumption, and after digging a little bit, was he wanted power and he wanted to feel like he was in control.
Yeah,
he didn't want me to take his control away, which is what he felt I was doing, and so I gave him back his control. I said, you can keep the diaries, but you're going to have to give me 3 names. And these will be 3 people who will lose their jobs so you can keep the diaries. My job's not to find out if we can save the money, it's to find out where. And I think we're going to be better with the people, but it's your decision. And that was probably an abrupt way of addressing that. It didn't probably feel great for him at the time, but it highlighted the reality of the situation, which was every decision has consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted him to retain that power and control that he so desperately wanted, and gave it back to him. And it started to shift the way we worked together afterwards, because it wasn't about me versus him anymore.
Yeah.
It was about, we're here to solve this big problem and let's do it in a way that's going to be the best for everyone. So it's a big shift.
So that was his situation. What do you find is, like, you work with a lot of organizations, from smaller businesses right through these major global corporate enterprises. But when it comes down to it, why don't people do what we want them to do? Like, generally, when we're saying that, we're the person who's in control. So we're either the business owner, or maybe we're on the management team, or even a team leader, where you have an outcome, like I was saying earlier, you have an outcome that you want to reach, but people just don't seem to. Is it apathy? Like, have we chosen the wrong people?
Sometimes that's true. Yeah, sometimes we've chosen the wrong people. More often, I think we build apathy. We create apathy. Let me give you a simple way of thinking about this. You design, you want to get us from A to B. You say, this is the way we're going to get from A to B. And you map out this path and say, that's what we're going to do. That's our process. And so you essentially want to give your people these rules around, okay, John, or you've got to do either A or B in this situation.
Which is, we do that, right? We create processes. It's like, this happens, you do this. If someone wants a refund, this is how you process it. If someone wants an exchange,
Correct.
This is how you process it. I mean, realistically, isn't that how businesses, like good businesses, should run?
Sure, absolutely. There should be processes. What we don't think about, though, is we're deploying these processes. We build them in a room that's plain and nice and comfortable in a non-stressful situation, where we imagine what are all the scenarios that can go through this process. We then deploy it in a super volatile, chaotic, and ambiguous world. And you can't control all the different inputs that are going on. And so we say to someone, okay, you have to pick A or B. In this situation, you have to do A or B. At some point, though, A and B might both be wrong. And so our person, John in this case, goes, I've got to do A or B, but they're both not right. So what options do they have? Well, one option is they can break the rules. They go, I'm going to choose C. I know it's not A or B. I might get in trouble. That creates a high level of uncertainty. I don't feel safe anymore. Oh, what's going to happen to me? There could be retribution.
But you have to have built a very strong culture for someone to choose C and be okay with making that decision.
I don't think you have to create an intentional culture where that's possible and that person knows they'll be safe if they do it. But that's a hard thing to build. And we'll talk more about that. The other option, which is more likely, is that John says, look, I know that A and B are both wrong. I'm just going to choose A and I don't care. No, it's not my decision. I'm not engaged in this. This is not my job. I'm just pressing the buttons. Yeah. And I get paid and I don't care. And, whoever made the rule, they're the idiots and it's their fault. And that's what we experience in customer service too often. It's not that people break the rules to get things right. It's that they feel so unsafe in that idea of breaking the rules that they just don't care anymore. The computer says no. That's the sort of outcome that we have. And we wonder why we have bad customer service, or people don't don't take the initiative. And, as business owners, we sort of go, I thought you would take the initiative and jump in here and do something. But you've spoon-fed them so much that they don't know how to. And they don't feel it's safe to take the initiative. They feel it's scary, it's dangerous. And so it's much, much more comfortable for them to disengage. And then they just look at you and go, look, I'll just do whatever you tell me to do. You've got to have all the answers.
Yeah, it's your business.
Which he's your business. Yeah. You just tell me, I don't know. And, that's a hiding to nothing as a business owner, because you haven't employed people. You've employed robots that complete tasks. And sure, all of that stuff, you can automate that as much as you can and get the people out of there, because they hate it. No one loves them being in that apathetic space. They hate it. You don't get the value out of it. They're expensive. They have sick days. Automate all that stuff. But if you want to have people, you've got to use them as highly intelligent resources that can make decisions in ambiguity. So it's a totally different game.
What you're basically saying is people shouldn't do what you tell them to do. So we came on starting to talk about why people don't do what you want them to do. But now we're saying actually they shouldn't do what we want them to do. So Where's the line? Like, how do you build a situation where it's like, when it's this stuff, you need to do what I say, but when it's this stuff, I need you to think.
So the question would be, when it's this stuff, you need to do what I say. Why? Why do you need to do it that way? And if they don't know why, if they're just complying because you said so, that's a problem.
Okay.
But if you say, look, in this scenario, we have to check A, B, and C, because if we don't check A, B, and C, and one of these things go wrong because it's a complex thing, and we get them to understand what's going on in that process, then they go, oh, okay, now I understand. That's what I've got to do. If you said to someone, you have to indicate every time you get to a corner in the road, they go, oh, okay, I have to indicate. But if you said it's important for other drivers to understand where you're going so they can make decisions and change their behavior, right, so I need to actually communicate with other drivers. That's why I'm indicating. It's a subtle change, but it's an important one because there's other ways you can indicate. If your your indicators aren't working, then you've got to wave at someone is a better scenario, right? Because at least you're still communicating. It's about trying to unpack that. Now, what we do as leaders, though, is say, if there's any uncertainty, then ask me. And
I think I've been guilty of that as well. If you're not sure, just ask me.
And so what happens to the leader is they ask you everything, right?
Sometimes. I think definitely when there's that definite uncertainty, and that for me that quite often happens with someone when they're new, because they want to keep their job, they want to make you happy, they want to make sure that they feel good in their position, and having just gone through this, there are lots of questions, and I'll admit sometimes I get frustrated, and I'm just like, you could have just done this, but then I have to take that step back and say, you've only been here for a few weeks. Like, you don't know that that's an okay thing to do yet.
And it's the way in which you answer the question that's going to set you up for success or failure. So if someone asks you, Selena, this has happened, what should I do, A or B? And if your response is A, just do A, then what have you taught them really? You haven't taught them very much.
No.
You taught them that a reaction to this specific scenario. So when a slightly different scenario comes up, what do? They call.
Yeah.
Hey, Selena, what do I do now? A or B? And you go, A. Okay. Now, you get frustrated because you're like, they should have been able to work that out. But what you didn't tell them was the context. You didn't tell them why you'd make that decision. Yeah. Why is that the right decision? And you're training your people to rely on you. I had a good friend who fell into this exact scenario, and she complained to me one day and said, oh, my team, they just call me and call me and call me. And we were sitting at lunch, and her phone just kept on ringing. And I was able to listen to, her side of these calls. And they all went like this. Oh, hey, what's up? Oh, yeah, just do this. Okay, cool. See ya. And I said, they keep calling because you keep giving them answers. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, you're spoon feeding them and you're building a reliance.
Yeah.
They're dependent on you. I said, here's what I want you to do. Next time they call, ask them what they think they should do.
Love that.
And she said, but they won't know. I said, that's okay. What I want you to do is say, hey, what do you think we should do? And they would say, oh, I'm not really sure. And I said, well, all you need to reply to them is, okay, we'll have a think about it and give me a call back. They'd call a bit later and go, hey, look, I think we could do this, this, or this. And she'd say, okay, which of those do you think is the right thing to do? And they go, well, I think this. And she'd go, awesome. Go give it a go and see how we go forward.
Yeah.
And so we now train them to don't call with no answers, call with options.
Yes.
And then we train them to say, I've got your back. If the options sound good, just give it a go and I'll be there to support you.
I think what I like about that as well is when they come with a couple of options, is it's allowing them to, because sometimes their options are better than yours. Let's be honest. Like, I don't know everything. Sometimes my team come up with way better stuff than I do. But if they come to you with some suggestions and then you can say, yep, I think that the second one is great and this is why, what they do is they start to get an insight into the way that you think and the way you want things done. So I have a question for you. Can we go with like a really simple scenario that everybody who's listening would have gone through at some point? and tell me what you think, if this is a do what I say or think about this for yourself situation. So say you've got a process which is on returning products, and your return is, must be in brand new condition with all the tags on in the original packaging. That's the process. And if it's not any of those, you don't get a refund. So a return comes in and it's got the tags on, but it's not in the original packaging. So now your staff have got this conundrum, which is somebody, whether it's physically brought it into the store or it's, you're on customer service and you're having this discussion. It's like, okay, you've only met 2 of the 3 criteria. Yes, we could, and you've explained, the reason is we need to be able to resell it. Like, we probably could resell this because it's just missing the plastic bag that it was in, but it doesn't meet all the criteria. But I don't have an option here. Is this a do what I say, like stick to the rules, you need to meet 3 out of 3? Or is this a, hey, what would you do in this situation?
So what I would say here is if you're relying on rules, this is really tough. And if you're relying purely on rules, there's a good chance your people will reject.
Yeah.
And there's also a good chance that your customer will be really upset and think that's unfair and this won't go out. This won't work out well for you. So the question here would be, what are the values that you run your company by?
Oh, we haven't talked about that. Can I just jump in and say, I am so passionate about values. It goes in our job descriptions, like before they even come into the company, they go into onboarding material. It goes on their first day. And I will put my hand up and say, I actually fired somebody, but that was one of them. So our 3 big values are bold, insightful, and knowledgeable. And we have a big vision as well to help 50,000 independent retailers in the next 5 years. That stuff is everywhere. And on day 4 of somebody's training, they didn't know the name of the product that we sell. And when I asked the name, that was their job, was a salesperson. And when I asked if they could tell me what our vision was, it was to help people. And I'm like I'm pretty passionate about this stuff because when I bring someone on board, I want them to be bold. I want them to think outside the box. I don't need lots of yes people. I need people who will, because we're strategists, right? We need to think a little bit differently. We have to be knowledgeable. That's the key thing people come to. And we have to be insightful. We have to go to look at someone's business, look at their scenarios, look at how they're feeling and make a decision. So if you don't fall into those boxes, then this is not the right business for you, which is why I'm so passionate about putting that up front, because no, that's not everybody. And it's okay that it's not everybody. If you just want to come to work and do your thing and get paid, this is probably not the best organization for you to work at. But there's lots of places that are good for you. So I'm just going to come in and say, if you haven't thought about like what your company values are, we have other values, which is things like being accountable, being on time, things like that. But our 3 big values that we use for the hiring process are bold, insightful, and knowledgeable. And conversely, I recently hired someone who didn't have all the skills I needed because they so fell in love with our vision and our values without me. On the first interview, they'd done all the research and said, I want to come and work for your company. Like, I want to be part of this. Now, when you get that, you can train anyone to do anything, in my opinion. Like, if they're already on board before they've even met you, then everything else is a no-brainer. So back to you.
No, that's great. And look, it's I'm fully on board. I totally agree with that approach, and I'd probably build on it to say the what you've described there is what I would call your beliefs.
Yeah.
And so when you look at history, has shown groups of humans that come together and are successful have a shared set of beliefs. You know, they believed in Rome, the vision of Rome, or they believed in the empire, they believed in a religion, or whatever the belief was. They had this set of beliefs that held them all together. The second thing they did, though, was build rituals and symbols that reinforce the beliefs. You see this in flags, in traditions, in festivals. We build a set of activities that physically embody and align to those belief systems. In your organization, you have the same thing. You have vision and values, you have all of that, those beliefs, but then you build processes and systems that you do daily that either align or don't align to those beliefs. And that's where the challenge comes,
that's
right?
the sticking point, isn't it?
Exactly, because if you want your people to be bold and insightful, and then you tell them, but do exactly what I say and never go outside the box, what you said is, I want you to believe in bold. I just don't want you to ever be it.
Yeah, and I have to say that again goes into our job descriptions. Is we say things like, we want you to be part of the growth of the company. Like I probably spent a lot of my earlier years thinking that I was the boss. And now I think of myself as the visionary with amazing people, because I can't know everything. And you know what? You burn out if you want to know everything. And I literally remember sitting in Shavasana in yoga one day with tears streaming out of my eyes. And I've gotten up and the teacher's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "It's just hit me. I don't have to know everything." And I don't even know where that came from, but it was such this relief where it was like, I don't have to know everything. I just have to have amazing people in my network who know lots of stuff and that I can call on or I can refer to. And that was like this big weight had lifted off my shoulders. Like, I don't have to be God. Like, I just have to know what we want to achieve and who we want to help and how we're going to get there. And
that insight and knowledge you're not the owner of it. That's something that you channel and you bring together. And so, we go back to our returned packaging.
Yes.
If the values but if the values your organization are perfection, everything we do has to be perfect and immaculate. And that was, an underpinning part of your values. Then you might say to your people, reject it. Because we aren't going to put anything back out that's not perfect. And that might be, if you are a luxury brand, that's a customer experience as well, isn't it? It's like, I don't expect to have anything that's ever been returned. And I don't agree with what they did here, but when Burberry went and burnt all of their clothes that they couldn't sell, like I that really grates me the wrong way because my values don't align. But for them, that was the decision of our values are this exclusivity, this perfectionistic luxury brand, hard to obtain. We don't want this to get into anyone's hands. You can see that aligned with their values. Yes. I'm not going to buy this stuff anyway.
No, me neither. We're on the same team here. But they're devout followers, the customers Correct. Who are part of that community. Probably embraced that because now their thing like status quite often, we call them leverage points. Status is quite often a leverage point for those people. It's like, now I am confident that the thing I bought is not going to be replicated. It's not going to be secondhand. It's not going to be put in a discount store.
Absolutely. But if your values are something very different, you'll make a different decision. If your values are really focused around customers and serving them and, making sure we get the best for them, then it might be a no-brainer. I remember David Thodey, I heard this story about David Thodey when he was running Telstra and really trying to transform Telstra to be super customer focused. Someone said to him, if I've got this challenge where I could help this big customer, but it's going to blow my budget if I do it, what should I do? And he said, if you listen to the values, that's an obvious answer. You serve the customer.
Yeah.
I don't care about you. The customer is our number one. And so as an organization, yes, you've got to have some processes and systems, no doubt. There's going to be a whole bunch of things that are obvious, but there is always going to be complexity and ambiguity, and your people are going to stare into that and they have to make a decision. How we navigate through those ambiguous, complex challenges is either throw everything back to you as the boss and you make the decision, which is exhausting, and we don't teach our people and they don't learn to make decisions. Or when we stare into, well, how do you make that decision? What will start to emerge is, well, I do it based on these values, these principles.
Yeah.
And then what we want to do is take those principles and start to share those with our team and talk to them about it and say, well, look, I'd make it this way because of these things. These are the things that are important to us. Bold, insightful, knowledgeable. That's us. And therefore, the way I use that to make a decision here is this. And now some people will go, I haven't got time for this. I'm on the phone. I'm busy. But investing in that once or twice means that the decisions are made forever in a consistent way. And look, there'll be some bumps along the road, but it's far easier for you.
You said that you did this with Telstra, which is a big telecommunications company. So can you actually achieve this at scale? For a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, they might have, a handful of employees, but they're listening to this podcast because they want to grow. So how do you, I feel like you could do this quite easily with 5, 10, maybe even 15 people. But after you get to those bigger kinds of numbers, like you said, right back at the beginning, people, they make decisions. We don't know why they make the decisions. Even if you put some parameters in place, so if we take that return, for example, and you say, these are some of the options you could come up with, but this, the end outcome is to align with our values. Do you do that right back at the beginning when you hire? Is it in your training? I'm just wondering, because I'm looking at hiring a bunch of new people, how do I do that so that if I have 20 or 30 people, everybody is on the same page? Now, they might not all make the same decision, but they're all on the same page.
Yeah. So let me answer it. So first of all, can you do it at scale? Yes. Is it harder at scale? Absolutely. And the question, I guess, is, well, how do you do it when there's 4 people? Well, the way you'd probably do it is talk to them a lot and share stories of it and communicate those stories. And when there's 5 of us, we sit in the same room, we have a chat regularly, they overhear conversations. The culture is very consistent because we're in our little tribe.
Yeah.
As you start to grow, those interactions become less frequent and there becomes some differentiation. So what you need to do is turn the dial up as a leader on how often I talk about the values. We don't want to fall into the trap of putting up a poster or having a page on the intranet that says, these are our values, and expecting that people look at it. It's a bit like we spend all this time on a position description, but no one pulls it out of their drawer every Monday morning and goes, oh, what am I going to do again? Right? How do they know what to do? Well, they have a conversation. You talk to them, you give them guidance, you support them. And if we want to embed either processes or values or any our culture in general, it's through interactions. A good example that you can read up on a lot is Zappos.com.
Yeah.
Right. And Tony Hsieh talks about this. He's actually passed away now, but Tony Hsieh talked about it a lot, which was people have to have collisions. I want them to interact a lot. And their values and their culture was so fundamental to the way they did things. So they would constantly talk about it. He would constantly be sending notes about it. He would be doing videos about it. They would be encouraged to express those things regularly. And you can absolutely scale that. It's harder, but you can scale it. The thing is the consistency. What will erode your values quicker than anything else is when you say this is my value and demonstrate that it's not true.
Yeah.
Because the inconsistency creates doubt and uncertainty in people's minds, and that's a deal breaker for humans.
Yeah.
If you looked at I don't know if you follow things like the rugby, the All Blacks.
Not a sports person, but love the team, the dynamics of team in sport.
And the All Blacks are very, very unique in some ways, that they've built a culture where they clean their own dressing room. So when they leave the dressing room after a match, it is spotless, often cleaner than it was when they walked in. Now, they do that because they have values around, pride in that they do in their team. But the coach doesn't have to say anything anymore. He doesn't have to walk in at the end of a game and say, hey, guys, we've got to clean up in here. The new players come in and they just see that this is the way we do things.
Do it. Yeah.
And if you imagine if a young player came in and threw something on the floor, do you think the coach would have to say anything?
No.
Of course not.
No. I think that was something that I probably did very inadvertently when I had my stores, was like embodying that autonomy and decision-making. And I still remember, and I quite often talk about this, we would have systems as well, like this is how you put something into the POS but if the system would update, it would get to the point where I didn't have to say anything. I mean, I wasn't using the POS, but I still remember coming in one day and I walked in and Lisa was like, oh, the POS didn't update. They sent an email. I read the email. I checked it out. I've already updated the process and sent everybody an email to let them know to check it. I'm like, this is the life, right?
Absolutely. And look, what you've probably done there, you might have been inadvertently or subconsciously. There's a phrase I like, which is good leaders build teams, great leaders build leaders. And what you're trying to do to sustain that culture, to stop being so busy. And some people think that doing this loses their power, but it actually multiplies your impact, right? Which is, I'm not going to be the hub of all decisions. I'm going to create people who work with me. They might not even have a title, but they are absolutely leaders of this culture, this vision, this organization. And they will do that. They'll make those decisions. They'll take those actions. They'll have that foresight because they know my vision, my values, and they know how we make decisions around here and how we do things around here.
I have a question for you. It's not necessarily something that we've talked about yet, but we were just talking about it, made me think of it. And I have a few kind of previous clients who were in that mid 7-figure turnover, multiple stores or decent online because it's multiple 7 figures. And one of the things I always encountered, every single one of those people who own business owners had to have their fingers in all the pies. And I mean, I was looking at it and I was exhausted. It kind of almost back to that conversation with you and your friend and the phone kept buzzing. But this need to know everything that's going on in your business can be difficult. I mean, I know that I sometimes struggle with that too. And sometimes if like one of our clients wants to speak to somebody else on my team, I'm kind of like, well, what about me? Only for a moment. But my question to you would be, if people are listening to this going, oh, that's me and it is exhausting and I know it's not the best for the company, what are some things that you can do? Because I'm the kind of person who just calls it out. And I know that not everybody reacts well to that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yep, I need to know what's going on social media. I need to know what's going out in the newsletter. I've got these people who I brought on because I trust them, but I still need to know everything that's going on. What are some things you can do as a leader? I mean, I don't even know what goes out in our newsletter. I haven't read a newsletter for 4 years. But what are some things you can do as the leader of the business to pull back on having to know all the things, but not pull back? Because quite often if we're leaders of business, we're like all or nothing. So you can't just go back, oh no, it's all up to you guys now. How can you, I guess, extricate yourself out of that process in a really graceful and empowering way?
So the thing I'd say, and there's a bunch of pieces, there's psychological things going on here everywhere, right? So one of it is I need to feel like I'm in control. I need to feel like that I know what's going on. One of it might be I don't actually trust my people as much as I might say I do, and that's common. I fully trust you, but I want to check everything you do. And that's not really, and so the level
it's probably the first one from my experience. It's more that I think their identities are so wrapped up in the business that if they don't know all the things, it's like they aren't in control and it's not their business anymore. So it's for me that was that headspace of actually, this is the best thing in the world when you can get to this level, but unpacking that is really difficult.
There's a couple of things I'd say. First of all, make sure that you're really clear on what are the results that you want to see and what's your dashboard that shows that you're getting those results. And the reality is there's probably multiple ways you can get those results, and you've chosen one. If your team finds that there's a better way, but you've been so controlling that they'll never be able to explore it and find it, then you're actually hamstringing your business a little bit.
Yeah.
So what are the results you're after? Be really clear on that. The vision, I think you said this earlier, I'm the visionary. I want to know where we're heading, big picture. Because if I'm concentrating on all the detail and no one's looking at this big picture, we could be driving really fast off a cliff.
Yeah. Or you end up stuck in traffic. That's what I see happen. You just end up poodling along day in, day out, just putting out fires and just doing the things.
Exactly. So, this is the old, are you on the dance floor or on the balcony?
Yes.
Leaders need to get up on the balcony and have that perspective, right? So one of the things you want to recognize and acknowledge is, and you can do a simple task here, how much of your time each week do you spend in those two positions?
Yeah.
And, some leaders will go, oh, it's easy. I spend, half my time up here and half my time down here. but I work 100 hours a week or something. Okay,
yeah, that's 2
sustainable.
jobs.
Yeah. So maybe you want to think about that differently. The second thing is, where can you really add value? I've spoken to a lot of really senior executives around this and asked them this question, and the answer is often pretty consistent. They'll say, my job is not to be across all of these different areas. I can't be an expert in all of them. My job is to hire people who are awesome in all of these areas, keep them passionate and support them, and then to add value where I can.
Yeah.
So if I'm actually, if my background is in digital marketing or something like that, then I might dip into that space a lot more. But I'm not going to worry about, I'm not going to go and hassle my accounting team and tell them, how many decimal places to use. That's not my expertise. Yeah. And there is an element there of fear, which is if I'm not in there, then how do I know it's going to work? But the reality is, unless you can let go of that, you're not empowering that team.
No.
And it's much better to have someone who you have a trusting conversation with. This is where a lot of the work I do is building those leadership teams so that people come to the table. They don't look across the table and see a competitor for budget and resources. They see someone who they know is another vital organ in this organism growing and being successful. And they're there to share resources. They're there to work with your vision and help drive this whole thing forward. So you've got to be able to, one, I think, be really clear on where you're allocating your time. Is that adding lots of value? And where it's not, pulling back, but building that relationship so that you've got that trust.
I think what I took away from that the most was the keeping everyone on track, because 1, it's your vision. And 2, keeping people on track is not abdicating all responsibility. And this is what I was saying. We end up like all or nothing. And we're like, well, I hired you because you're the expert. Don't come to me for KPIs. Like, you should be doing this because this is your area of expertise. And even if we like dumb that down to, and I don't mean dumb it down, but we simplify that down to, I hired an ads agency, but they're not getting me results. But did you tell them you can't say I want more sales. Right. You can't just abdicate all responsibility to, well, this is your job now. So to me, the key phrase that I take away from that is you have to keep them on track and you have to be responsible for getting them to get you to your vision. And that does mean you're going to have to do sometimes you have to make some hard decisions.
Yeah. And also letting them in on that big party, right? So often we have our sales team and we go, okay, you need to drive this many sales through, but we don't tell them about how that's going to flow through into our operations team and into revenue and profitability. And they're sort of part of this big picture, but they don't understand that bigger stream. Whereas if as a leadership team, you can sit down and go, here's how this all fits together. So make sure that when we are making decisions in sales, if you have a massive blitz, we invest heaps of money and you push through heaps of sales, but our operations can't deal with it and we fall over here, that was all wasted.
Yeah. I see that a lot too.
Yeah. And so the leader goes, well, I've got to try and balance all of this stuff. I've got to be the puppet master. And maybe you can, but maybe it's better to say, well, these are smart people. And if they know how, and this is why I again go back to that great leaders build leaders. I want you to be a leader of this business who understands how this is going to work and what's good going to look like here.
I love it. I think that's like the perfect place to wrap up. It's like a great ending point. If people want to connect with you a bit more, maybe talk to you about, helping grow their teams or growing themselves as a leader, where can they find you?
Yeah, so empathicconsulting.com is our website, EMPATHIC consulting.com. And there's lots of free ebooks and things people can download there to help them with lots of different things. Or connect with me on LinkedIn, Daniel Murray. You'll find me on LinkedIn. And always great. So connect with new people and see if I can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that today.
It was a great pleasure. Thanks, Lena.
So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at TheSelena Knight and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.